Danielle from Glenbow here with our Glenbow from Home program today. Today we're going to be looking at some artifacts, and we're going to do a program that we do at the museum called What Is It? What is it is when we find obscure items or artifacts in the collection. Obscure means something that you might not recognize right away. Maybe it's a little odd or strange, or you just don't know what it is. We find obscure artifacts and objects in the collections, and then we go through some really good investigation and really looking really closely and using our critical thinking skills and try to figure out what this object is. What was it used for? Who would have used it? We're going to use some of the lines of questioning like we've done before in our programs. And so we're going to look at things like the materials, how it's made, is it machine made or man-made? Does that give us some clues about maybe timelines that we can guess from this? We can look at how it's all put together and potentially get to a point where we can start to understand what it was actually used for. So here when we're at the museum, if we have artifacts that come into the collection, we don't always know what they are. And so we really do have to go through this kind of investigation process, even at the museum sometimes, to try and figure out what things are, or maybe where they're from, or the timelines. Sometimes we don't always know timelines for sure. And this kind of investigation will give us some really good clues about this artifact. Now, let's talk about an artifact and the definition of an artifact. And that's something that has been made by humans or used by humans. So let's say you're digging around, you're out in the countryside and you're digging around and you find a bone. A bone is not an artifact. If the bone has then been turned into a tool, maybe they scraped down the end and sharpened it somehow, that tool is then an artifact. It's been modified or changed by humans. It's been turned into something else. So when we look at an artifact like this, we look really closely at, first of all, let's just start looking at the materials, and I'll start taking you through this and kind of reading it to you. We'll do some close-up photos for you and some video shots that are focused in so you can see it a bit closer. But what I can see right away is it looks like this part here is made of leather. When I look on the inside, there's another layer of leather that looks almost like it's kind of there to smooth it out. These are metal, and they are a bit sharp on the ends. We don't want to be too, we have to be we have to be careful with it still and handle it properly. So we can see that this is metal. These all look pretty identical, which gives me a clue that it's probably made by a machine. This leather part, it almost kind of looks like a belt, like they've reused a belt. And when you look really closely, it's kind of looped around and looped around, and there's about 5 layers to it. 4, 5 here. And then it's got this bolt on the end. It's got an inside big face of the bolt and a bolt with a nut on it, which looks like it's got threads, so it looks like you can kind of screw it on and off, which means to me, and this could be a clue, that if you take that off, that this could actually open up. Okay? These layers of leather are sewn together, and when we look really, really closely, you can see that the stitching on this artifact looks like it was done by a machine. It's pretty perfect. When you see something that's pretty perfect or almost identical, usually that gives you a clue that it was from a machine. Inside of here, this piece that I was talking about, this protective piece, it's got some small nail heads, and then on the outside looks like they've kind of hammered them down or bent them down. So even though these look like they're machine made and it's sewn together with a machine, it looks like this is very much man-made, or it looks very worn. It's been used a lot. Another good clue sometimes too is if you smell something. So I'm going to smell it, and it definitely has a little bit of a musty smell, funky smell, kind of like a farmyard a little bit. So now what we would do at the museum is each person goes through, you look at this, and then what you do is you start to, once you've had a really good chance to look at it, we are going to actually do some drawings. So I want you guys to do some really good drawings, but mine's going to be really fast just so that we can kind of get this done quickly. So we can see that it's, this part is leather, and what we're going to do is we're going to label. And we're going to show the stitching, and we're going to write down that we think that the stitching is machine made stitching. And then we're going to put our metal spikes on. And we're going to write down that they're metal. Think that they're nails. We're going to say that it smells a little bit like a farmyard. Okay? What we're going to do is we're going to look, we're going to write down and sketch everything that you see. Everything you notice, anything that even you wonder about, or you say, I think this might be this, I wonder if this was used for blank. So let's talk a little bit about that right now. So when we're at the museum, a lot of times when we get to this point where we've had a really good chance to look at things, lots of people, this is a very good clue, okay? And lots of people think that this is a collar. Now, it is a collar. But now we have to think about, okay, what kind of collar is this? How was it used? It's a collar. Would it fit me? Like it would go on my head and it would go into my neck, but it would be really big and kind of wobbling around. That doesn't really make a lot of sense. We've got these spiked parts that are actually quite sharp. So lots of people think, oh, maybe this is for some kind of protection. We've got the smell, which is from the farmyard, and I'm going to tell you that this is for an animal, okay? So it is a collar, and it is for an animal. Now, what kind of animal do you think it would be for? Again, this is a really good clue. This opens up, we think, and can go back together so we can put the collar onto the animal. Now, what would these spikes be for? And a lot of guesses again, and if you guessed any of these things, then good job. There's no wrong answers in this investigation, because the more we guess and the more that we kind of get clues started and try to figure out what's going on and investigate, we're going to start to hopefully come to some conclusions. So this is a collar. It goes onto an animal. It's made out of leather. It's got spiky metal bits here. Now, why are those spikes there? Lots of people think that it's from protection from other animals. If an animal was coming to attack another animal, they could push it away. That's a really, really great guess, and if you had that, good job, but that is not the answer. That's not correct. So what we're going to do is we're going to give you a couple of photos that are good clues, a couple close-ups of the artifact itself. We're going to give you a photograph that is a really good clue for you, and then we're going to see if you can come up with the answer for this artifact. And we'll be back in a few seconds and start to go through what it actually is and what it was used for. Okay, so stick with us. We'll be right back. Okay, everyone, we are back with our answer for our artifact that we've been investigating. Now, I'm just going to give you the answer. This is a collar for a baby cow or a calf. And you might wonder, okay, what would this collar be for? Well, this collar is actually called a weaning collar. So what the farmers did was they would put or the ranchers, they would put this collar onto the baby calf, and this would go around his neck with the spikes up in the air, so they would be around the back of his neck. And what this did was, when they wanted the babies to stop feeding from their mom, they would put this collar on them and they would wean them off of their mom, which means that they would get them to stop drinking the milk from the mother's udders. So when this went on to the baby calf, the calf would go up to try and feed from the mom, and these spikes would poke her in the side or in the udders, and she would kind of kick them away. And this would slowly teach the calf to stop drinking from the mom's udders. It didn't really hurt the mom either. It kind of poked her a little, but she's a big animal and it wasn't too bad. So if you got that answer, great job. And if you got an answer of another animal, good job as well, because this is the whole point of what we're doing and what we do at the museum and what we want you to do all the time is, when you start to really look at something really close and investigate and use those skills, it's amazing what you can discover. And also, it just makes you really curious about the world. There's lots of kind of obscure things that are out there in the world. In fact, maybe you can find something at home that you can test this out. Maybe test it out on your mom and dad or your brothers and sisters or whoever you have around. It's a really fun game to play. So good job, you guys. Thanks for being here. Hope everybody's safe and healthy, and we see you next time. Okay, bye.